What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got Michael of the Almighty Saga. Thank you for your time today, man. It's great to be able to talk with you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yep. So we have this brand new acoustic album, Symmetry, coming out very, very soon, and you released actually a single off of it, which is A Tired World. Could that maybe serve as like a clear representation of what the vibe and the sound of this whole acoustic album is going to sound like?
I think so. I think it's a pretty good representation. I think that probably why part of the reason the record company chose that track as a first one. Wind 'Em Up came out I think 4 or 5 days ago, so we got a second one there as well. But between the two, it's a good idea of what people can expect. The one thing it's nice kind of explaining itself once people have heard it, but the initial reaction, Saga's doing an acoustic album of their older songs. It's like yawn central. It's like, oh yeah, great, that's just what we need. But when they realize that that's not what this is, it really is us reimagining these songs and like breaking down, not like an obvious ballad and make it easier for ourselves. You take the more epic tunes, the very musical ones, you take away all the synths and the electric guitars, and you've got a challenge on your hands trying to make that song come across in a new way. So it's not just an unplugged album, as it were. It's much more than that, and it's been nice to see the initial reaction to it for the people that get it. In other words, they understand where we're coming from. There's 50% of the very limited negative comments have been, I think, people that were expecting. Well, they read the words unplugged or acoustic versions and they go, oh, here comes an unplugged album.
Mhm.
I don't care for those. But of 50% of those who've had a chance to hear it, they go, okay, it's not just that. It is much more than that. Ian, for example, has had to take all his electric parts and turn them into acoustic. And that's a challenge in itself. You
Yeah.
still got to get the excitement factor, but out of an acoustic guitar. And I've had to adjust a lot of the vocals the way I approach the song because it just doesn't have that the size necessary for a larger vocal. So I've had to just rethink it, my whole approach to it. But it's been a labor of love and very challenging.
Yeah. Well, I heard I was interviewing a musician one time who was putting out like an acoustic EP one time, and he said like that he considers the acoustic guitar, he calls it the naked guitar because it really is one of those things where if you slightly botch a note, it's going to be noticeable. So it is an extraordinary challenge. You can't hide behind what I call the smoke screen of distortion.
Exactly. And the keyboards, I mean, all the synth sounds and all of that, it comes down to just playing those parts on piano, and you're under the microscope. It's very bare bones. So because of that, you're more open to scrutiny. And knowing that, you've got to be very selective about how you approach it and your performance and just the whole nature of the way you look at the album, the way you approach it. The nice thing about if there is a positive spin or a silver lining to the isolation factor of the COVID, was giving us a chance to make a record like this. And because of their older tunes and then ones that we know, we didn't have to be in the same room rehearsing these songs. It really was down to the individual to investigate his own part and change it or modify it accordingly. So it left us to our own devices, especially like with vocals, where I would just had the chance to experiment on my own and just come up with something. So it really was a matter of, okay, here's what we're going to do this song. Take your part and do what you'd like to do with it for this kind of setting. Same with the vocal and that. So it worked out really well. I mean, sharing files and that. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? But it was a blessing in disguise to be able to have this time and work on something that we had actually started work on in 2017, a European tour. We were opening for ourselves in a sense that we came out with a backdrop that was very similar to Symmetry. And just performed some of these songs just in an acoustic setting and called ourselves Pockets, which was the original name of the band. And we were a different entity opening for ourselves. So we took this chance to take that idea one step further and really make it a special kind of album.
Yeah, well, do you feel that when you like take a song and for lack of better words, I would say like reinvent it or, express it in a different manner acoustically, do you almost feel that that maybe could also change the context of the song or the meaning or the overall vibe of it as well?
Yeah, yeah. It can, yeah, especially songs that are almost, you would think, rely on the intensity to put a certain emotion across that. So that's there. That's the trick right there. There's a really fine balance that you have to strike with preserving the original, preserving the feeling from the original, and infusing it with a new way of looking at it. So without sacrificing that initial feeling, and whether in intensity or intimate moment, whatever. But yeah, it's an adjustment for sure. But you can't go so far away from it that it's just this abstract thing that used to be wind 'em up or used to be that. Oh, we do say the word wind 'em up in it. Yeah, you've got to strike that balance where it's still a familiar song, but with this new twist on it that is, for one of like it's a now version of it, or this. I mean, saying acoustic version, it's so misleading because it's just the immediate thought is, oh, you're playing it on an acoustic guitar. Yeah, there's an acoustic guitar on the record, but it's
Yeah. Uh,
yeah, you have to be careful not to. You're right about maintaining the integrity of the original tune and not straying too far away from that and having to make something exciting, but in a different way. I mean, the end of Pitchman, a song like Pitchman, is very exciting and happening and lots going on, and that now instead of that going on, we got the intensity from turning it into, it's almost like a hoedown. It's like
yeah.
it's sort of bluegrass and that, but exciting in its own way. So you try and translate, if it was an exciting part before, still try and make it exciting. It's just different instruments are doing that, and it's a whole different vibe. It still suits the song and still suits the lyrics.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, for us who, are very into the music and are like the European use of the word like acoustic, like you got to like be specific. It's like it's not just acoustic guitar, like, grand piano
Yeah,
would be considered acoustic. I feel like the best way to define acoustic is just the original use of original use
right,
of instrumentation. Like,
right.
like would you just consider to be live drums that aren't drum machines to be acoustic? Like when you bring a live drum set on
Yes,
stage?
yeah, exactly, exactly. This setting, but you know what? In a sense, the word unplugged is more apt because nothing on this record you had to plug in to play.
Yeah.
So that's a good way of looking at it. But I see the idea of the word acoustic is true. Drums, there's still drums whether you play them in this setting or whether you play them on the stage in a rock setting or in the studio in a rock setting of the song. But and in this case, I think Mike Thorne used a bass drum and a snare, but with the snare with brushes. Everything else was pots and pans and literally like kitchen percussion. So unplugged is actually a better expression to describe the instrumentation that was used. So yeah,
Yeah.
good
Well, I'm
point.
I'm sure a lot of people who are like just getting into Saga now cuz the album is called Symmetry. It's not like, you're doing Phase 1 unplugged or Full Circle unplugged or Images at
Yeah,
Twilight unplugged. So, I think just a lot
right.
of people are going to be going into this thinking it's just a brand new Saga album.
It's a good thing. That's a good thing, and thereby perhaps in best case scenario, going back and rediscovering all they got all these albums, which should be great. So.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe revisiting older material and being so close to the earth with it and revisiting it with original instrumentation has maybe opened up more doors for songwriting in the future?
That's a good point, actually. Um, it could well do. I mean, I can't say that definitive. Yeah, for sure. That's exactly what I was thinking. But that's a good point. It probably has. I would imagine that when it comes time to the next writing session for the next studio album, um, that will probably be in everyone's mind about how we approach this record. Um, which was obviously we had to go at it from a different direction, a different starting point, and uh, different end game. But I wouldn't be surprised if that became part of at least the subconscious approach to writing moving forward, because it certainly has. As for I mean, for my taste, it's been very successful. What we ended up the final product, what we ended up with. It was very satisfying. Everybody's very happy with what we did. We just, obviously crossed our fingers and put it out there. Very, very, very pleased with the initial reaction, as I said. But yeah, I think that's a good. I never looked at it that way. The first one to mention that, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it plays a role in how we put together the next one.
Hmm. Well, you have so many albums now. I mean, like when you
I
look at
know.
it, like world, going from like Worlds Apart to Behavior to Network to Trust to 2020, like, and now with Symmetry, you almost, and I've always thought, like, I don't know how you necessarily feel about this term, but I've always thought that Saga's music had like experimental qualities behind it. So it almost seemed like trying new things and going outside the box and pushing boundaries and even challenging
Always.
yourself. That's just
Yeah.
part of the initial Saga songwriting process, right?
It is, and we've always approached music that way from day one. It's just, it's not a matter. Let's write a song like that or a song like that. Let's just write a song. If we like it, we like it, and if it fits into someone's perception of us, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But their perception of us might be wrong because that's what we feel like doing it at that time, and that is a representation of what we feel like doing. We've gone left, right, and center, and upside down sometimes with certain albums, and the beauty of having a fan base as strong and as loyal as we have is they're very forgiving. So if we put out an album that's like not quite what they were expecting, they'll go, well, we're not crazy about this one, but we'll wait for the next. We'll forgive you one. I don't know how many they would forgive in a row, but yeah, you're right though. I mean, we've always tried to think outside of the box, and not just being unpredictable for the audience, for ourselves too. You got to push yourself as well. You can't just sit and go, oh, we got a great. We could have just made like a succession of Worlds Apart albums, thinking, oh, we've got a formula here, let's stick to it. No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
That was yeah.
Well, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you do the same
Totally.
album every time, if you have a formula, people will criticize you for being repetitive. If you experiment too much, people will say you're directionless. So, in the end, you just have to go with what your gut feeling is. And does the songwriting ever start off with like a preconceived idea, or would you say there's like a lot of improvising or trial and error involved?
What generally happens, I mean, it's different in everyone's individual circumstance, but there's the pre-writing phase, as it were, where we will individually write stuff at home or wherever, and get a wealth of material or pieces, like a nice verse or a nice chorus or just stuff that we've got. Then you kind of throw it into the melting pot, and everybody starts going, okay, well, let's try this. Let's try out that part. Oh, I've got a verse that would sound good with that, and this kind of thing. But I don't think there's ever really a preconceived sort of, what do we try and come up with a song that kind of got a feel like so and so, or like when we did that song, and let's do another Keep It Real. Let's do another, what we will sometimes do is, think about a song that was really cool, say like 8 albums back, and go, oh, that kind of reminds me of that feel we had in such and such. So it's not a matter of going, let's recreate Keep It Real. Let's listen to that song and go, what is it about that one that this what you just played for me is reminding me of that? Why? Not musically the same, but there's something about it, and that's about as far as that will go. And then off it goes. It's a natural thing. It's an organic thing, but it's probably there to a degree, but not something that we think, well, it's time that we wrote another Don't Be Late, or it's time we wrote another Wind 'Em Up, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first album that came out from the Saga catalog when I was born, I mean, in my lifetime, was The Security of Illusion. That was my first Saga. I was born in '93, but like,
Oh,
so I think it also really depends on, you have a dedicated fan base, and but many of those fans come from different generations and different times. Some
right.
people have been following you since, the early Ontario days in the beginning. Some people, were very heavily into progressive rock bands such as either Yes or Dream Theater or whatever, and then like they
Right.
may have stumbled upon you later into their progressive journey. So I think that's the beauty of having so many albums, is that you're going to
I
have
agree.
multiple generations, and they're going to come at you from many different angles. And I really don't like see fans having a specific go-to Saga album. Like with AC/DC, for example, a lot of people are probably going to gravitate towards Back in Black. That'll be like the universal agreement. But I feel like with you, people could appreciate Generation 13, or people could appreciate 2020, or Wildest Dreams, or The Beginner's Guide to Throwing Shapes, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any definitive for someone discovering the band. I was going to say this late in the day, but after such an extensive career and catalog, I don't think there's any one definitive starting point. You're right. On the social media, like someone will say, you know, I just discovered the band recently from such and such album. What would you recommend? And then you've got all the fans, you know, the Saga family, as we call them. Everyone's got a different piece of advice. Well, I would suggest going to this period, and that's the other thing, because it's been that many albums and 4 decades, it still blows my mind. There are like periods. They'll go like the network period, the albums that are around that time, or there's the first 3 or 4, there's that, there's that, or there's the later stuff, there's the 2020 and this and that. So start there and then go backwards, or start here and go this way. But yeah, it's great. And that is the beauty of having, lasted this long, or having that much of a variety of starting points, as it were, if you're discovering the band for the first time. Yeah. I'm still rediscovering certain things that I forget we've done. We've done so many songs that unless you played them live or listened to them at home, which I don't, 2 or 3 tracks from the 8th album, for example, and I will not have heard it since we put it out. I'll hear it when we're working on it, and maybe a little bit right afterwards. And then unless you play it live, and I'll rediscover it, literally going, wow, that's a cool song. I don't remember us doing that one,
Well, having those different periods and being so prolific, I'm going to call your band now the Progressive Picasso. That's what I'll call
it. Which period is your favorite?
Yeah, Progcasso. Pragasso.
Oh, you have ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first.
Yep. That, please name, if you name that your album, you could have the name if you would like to name that album. I'm personally giving it to you.
Picasso. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Now, you ready for the most difficult question of the whole interview?
Oh, great. Yeah, sure.
How do you know when a song is done?
You don't, because it's never done.
Yeah, I get that all the time.
You've never done. The song is never done. I will pick any song of all the songs we were just talking about, and I'll go back there and I'll do something. I would say I would do that different. The song is never done. I will deliver a vocal, begrudgingly completed, because of it's got to go. I'm totally happy with it. Everyone's totally happy with it. But you have to say to yourself, I'm done. Because if you don't stop me, I will keep refining it. And sometimes you do that and you lose it. You lose what you had. You're trying to perfect it. You've got to come to a point where you go, it ain't broke. I can't touch this anymore. But I want to. So in that sense, the song's never finished as far as I'm concerned.
Fair enough. And then you could always make an acoustic album.
How do you know? You know when the record company says,
yeah,
if we don't get this tomorrow, you'll miss the window. No, you've got to pull the reins back on at some point. And like I say, it's never really. I've never been 100% satisfied with anything I've ever done. So
yeah, I'm starting to think that the origin of record labels is coming from an artist who just couldn't finish anything, so he invented this concept of forcing.
So he's got a timestamp on saying he's got a deadline. Deadlines were built. Yeah, that's a good point.
And
otherwise, left to our own devices, we'd have a 6-disc. Every album would be a 6-disc album, and there'd be like 23-minute songs. And
yeah, that's why I've always said that a band at one point in their career, just to troll people or mess with people, release an album. We have a brand new album, and it's just one song, and then the next one is like the radio version or the explicit version, the remix, the country version.
The rainy day version.
Yeah. The good day version, the bad day version.
Yeah.
It's actually not a good idea. That's definitely something people could use to explore their artistic side.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the idea that these days, the idea of especially with COVID and the halt to live touring and all of that, and the whole machine just stopped and everything had to be reassessed. Releasing one song a month, for example, for the rest of your life. Every song you've got a new, every month you've got a new song, but you record like about 50 songs, say, to start with.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still stick with that once a month because you don't have just 1 month to write the next song. So you can be writing on a few of them for a few months, and you just keep adding to the stockpile. You just, it's like the Reader's Digest book or the Publisher's Clearinghouse Book of the Month Club or something.
Yeah.
Or Song of the Month Club,
Yeah. And the final question I wanted to ask you is because you explore these music from many different angles and you play multiple instruments and bring in so many elements, is there ever a time where maybe like a story or a concept or even lyrics themselves could maybe influence the direction of the music?
Sort of so if I understand the question correctly, has there been a story or something that's inspired lyrics or
yeah.
a song?
Or yeah, like the sound itself, like the sound.
It actually has happened a couple of times. One that came to mind, I was reminded of recently, actually. There's a song called Odd Man Out. And I was reminded recently that it was actually written about I was affected by this book. It was something Minds of Billy. It was about a gentleman by the name of Billy Milligan. And he was diagnosed with, it's actually dissociative identity disorder. It's more than just schizophrenia. It's multiple personalities, and distinct and proven. And I read it, and I thought about what it would be like to be him, to be the actual Billy Milligan, not one of the guys or girls. And I ended up writing Odd Man Out about that specifically because I was so affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so it does happen. Rarely, but it does happen.
Yeah, it's always interesting on how like inspiration is everywhere. I've always said that inspiration is almost like air. You're breathing it in regardless whether you realize it or not.
That's I mean, I would say 70 to 80% of the lyrics I've ever written are just about human nature and just what's around you, and just I'm an observer. I'll sit in an airport, a busy airport, and I can't help but look around and think, I wonder what's up with those two people, and they look like maybe they're parting ways, or it looks like a family on vacation. There, oh, those two guys aren't getting along. Maybe it's about the football game or whatever. But I'll just watch the interaction, and I'm a big fan of human behavior. And you're right. There's no shortage of things to write about on any given day. And God knows, the last year, the last 365 days has given us plenty to write about. And not just, across the board.
We're gonna enter, I think, the best era. Like we're gonna enter like a new age renaissance. I feel like.
Oh yeah, no kidding. It's true. And I was talking to someone earlier about the fact that with all the lockdown and that, and musicians writing and having a chance to do that, especially touring musicians, you don't have enough time to sit and just write. There's going to be a wealth of new releases coming in 2021. That's just the market's going to be full of all this really cool stuff that was written during the lockdown.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to hearing it. And again, like inspiration strikes when you least expect it, and a lot of times at the most inconvenient times as well. Like,
true.
Yeah, like that's why I'm always afraid. Like artists should not be pilots because I'm always afraid they're gonna get inspired. Is it like
it can happen, man.
Yeah, everybody was excited about Bruce Dickinson flying the plane. I'm like, I hope he's not thinking. I hope he's not writing lyrics as like he's approaching the tarmac and like
Yeah, especially the kind of lyrics that they deal with sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. Is there just anything else with Saga you would like to promote for the release of Symmetry, like maybe a live stream performance or anything else?
Well, as I said, we're really, really proud of Symmetry. It's more than people. For those who are not sure of what it is, it's more than just an acoustic version of the songs. It's a real labor of love. We had a great time doing it. It was very challenging, but ultimately our most satisfying in a long time. But there is at least one more studio album still in us, and there's no sign of us slowing down or taking a break. So awesome. We can't wait to get on the road and see everybody again.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Saga Symmetry coming out very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.